Welcome to the latest episode of the Dirty Boot Show. I'm Chris Nixon. We've got two phenomenal guests, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves. But first, Rosy, do you mind if we start with you?
My name is Rosy Aburto-McDonough. I'm the Executive Director for Hispanic Contractors of Colorado, and we are super excited to be here, and hopefully this conversation will bring you some additional knowledge.
Yeah, and I know we're going to dive deeper into HCC in a minute, but before we get there, Lauren, do you mind introducing yourself?
Sure. Yes, my name is Lauren Grosh. I am a partner of Sky Blue Builders. We are a general contractor. We do a lot of commercial work all across the Front Range, and I'm part of the HCC Legislative Committee and a previous board member for the HCC as well. So really excited to be here, Chris. Thanks.
Rosy, why don't we start with you? For those people, our guests, watchers, viewers, that don't know about the HCC, tell us a little bit about what it is.
Absolutely. So the Hispanic Contractors of Colorado was created 33 years ago in our community as a 501c6 membership organization. We are 200 members strong, very, very active in several different areas. One of the main things that the HCC does is we are dedicated to ensure that small, medium-sized, and prime contractor businesses in the architect, engineering, and construction industry can talk to each other. We look for to have meaningful impact in the Colorado economy and to be a leader in creating effective networking spaces for small and minority-owned businesses to connect with potential clients, build networks, and retain important business and industry knowledge. We also have an educational arm or affiliate. It's called HCC Contractor Academy, and we create very affordable educational content for companies in these industries.
So tell us, when you join, what happens?
Absolutely. So we have a variety of different membership levels. We're geared towards figuring out what fits the company best. So in the networking space, we do have a monthly general membership meeting, GMM, event that creates a space where people can get to know each other. Instead of just knowing the name of a company or a public entity, you see a face. You can talk to them. You can talk to them about possible contracting opportunities, possible, working with each other, kind of like partnerships, working two companies together and going after a contract together and things like that. We also have committees. The committees are a very important space that we create. So to give you an example, Chris, we have the Aviation Committee, the Infrastructure Committee, we have the Small Business Roundtable Committee, who is dedicated to provide resources to small and medium-sized businesses. And then we also have Women in Leadership. As you probably know, in the construction industry, women are less than 20% in the workforce. Now, what we want to do is we want to teach and put out there the knowledge of women can definitely work in the industry, and they have so much value in different areas. It's not just holding a hammer and hitting a nail, right? There's so many more opportunities that we can see in business development, marketing. There's so many other things. So we create that environment in the networking area. On the legislative side, basically what we do, because we have a legislative committee, we create a space for the small businesses to have a voice. Every legislative session gets presented with bills and law proposals that affect the small businesses, and they affect the way we operate, they affect the way we have to pay for fees and things like that. Our employees affect our workforce. So the legislative committee is the voice for that small business that do not have the capacity to retain a lobbying firm on their own. So we are a group that represents that industry. And then last but not least, the educational component that I mentioned before, the HCC Contractor Academy. We create affordable sessions in areas such as scheduling, project coordination, project costs, contracts, things that are very, very important Accounting is so different for a construction company than what it is for just a regular consulting company or a regular professional services company. So those are some of the topics that we have in front of the audience. And lately we have started to do a lot of Spanish classes as well, because who's coming behind us? Those companies that may feel more confident learning the content in their own native language. So those are some of the things that we create as an organization, and those are basically our main pillars. One more part that we have and we do a lot of work around is leadership development. So we have scholarship programs that help those individuals basically go on to leadership classes with different organizations to develop themselves as the next leaders in our group.
Very cool. Yeah, because I was reading here that when you mentioned committee groups, 11? Is that how many you have?
Yes.
It seems like that's great. Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
How'd you get into this?
So my background is, I've done a little bit of everything, as you can imagine. As an immigrant, I got here when I was 25. Thank goodness I had already my undergraduate degree in math, which I'm very passionate about numbers. I work in banking, I work in business development. I also had my own company as a credit reporting agency nationwide. I took it internationally because of my language skills and things like that. So I've done a lot of different things. And the last couple of things that I did was I was a consultant at the Small Business Development Center network. I work throughout the state with small businesses of every walk of an industry that you can imagine, and every size as well, from one person to hundreds and hundreds of employees. Then I went on to be the director of the Minority Business Office for the Governor's Office at OEDIT, and that just opened my eyes as to, what are some of the things that a business needs, what sort of challenges we face. And funny enough, what I learned is that all of us business owners, it doesn't matter if we have a restaurant, if we have a construction company, or if we have a professional services company, our challenges are very similar, right? When we think about growth and when we think about success, success has different meanings for different people, right? But I learned a lot from that. And then I was a part of the HCC board of directors. I was their treasurer. And when I was offered this position, I was like, you know what? I think I can have a really great impact. And also what I saw that is an opportunity to be more intentional into one industry. The construction, engineering, architect industry allowed me to just, from the universe, just kind of focus on one big thing and have more impact in helping these type of companies. Not to mention, this industry is filled with minority-owned firms. That was, a natural fit for me. So that's how I ended up here.
That's cool. All right, let's shift a little bit. Let's talk about the Contractor Academy a little deeper. You mentioned it earlier, if I'm remembering correctly, which is only 10 minutes ago, so I hope I'm right. But tell us a little bit more about that.
Absolutely. We have two different types of programs. We have core classes that takes place every month. A couple of different classes. We can talk about insurance, accounting, bonding. We can talk about scheduling, project coordination, project management, project costs, estimating, all kinds of different things. That's on the core side of things. There is another component that's a leadership class that takes 6 months and is called the scaling program.
Okay.
Fantastic program. So what happens is that takes place for 6 months. The attendees is a petite group of about 15 companies.
Okay.
And what we do is we go through the classes every month, is 2 classes every month, but then we also pair them with a coach. And the coach works in the area that business works in, but the coach is a C-suite level type of executive that works with them in identifying the challenges they have, identifying, what are some of the solutions they can look up to. When they look at a prime contractor has a different type of infrastructure versus a small or medium-sized business, right? But what are some of the things they can utilize in their operation and incorporate in their infrastructure so they can grow, they can go on to the next level. And that's what this class is all about, scaling the business to the next level of success that they have identified. Like I said before, success means different things for different people. My success could be, hey, I want to start working in a different state. I want to open a branch in a different state. Or I want to increase my workforce by 10 people. How do I do that? How do I make sure that I'm hiring those 10 individuals and I have enough money in my bank account to keep them in place, right? Because if I hire 10, I'm not only in charge of those 10 individuals, I'm in charge of their families. And that's a big concept for a small business. You know, you're not just hiring an individual. A family depends on that individual. Maybe I look horizontally into my line of business. Do I want to take on activities that are after my process or before my process? How do I expand horizontally my scope of services? You know, things like that. So that's what this class helps people with, identifying the best way to grow their business and being very effective at it. It takes a lot of investment, not only time, but financially, lending capacity. How do I do that? How do I get to that point as a business to make sure that I grow in a healthy way and do that? So that's the educational side with HCC Contractor Academy.
So processes, you said you have about 200 companies that are members
Yes.
of HCC and then 15 that are part of the 6-month program, and then it obviously just cycles. How do you guys go about like identifying, and how does someone become a part of that?
Absolutely. So there's requirements. You're required to have at least 3 years of operations
Okay.
to be part of this program. You're required to have at a minimum $1 million of revenue because you have to have a business concept, right? You cannot be a startup. This is not a program for a startup company. This is a program for a company that is operating in their field, in their trade, but then let's say they want to start working with the city and county of Denver. They want to work with Denver International Airport. They want to work with some other public entities, and they have to have the strength financially and operationally, infrastructure-wise, to be able to perform in those contracts, because those contracts, once you sign them, you're responsible for performing, and not only for your own company and for your own reputation as a company, but also all these public entities have to make sure that the people they are hiring are going to be able to finish the project.
Very cool. We're going to shift to Lauren. Legislative Committee. Let's talk about that.
The Legislative Committee is comprised of 10 business owners with 12 representatives.
Okay.
And our overall mission is to advocate and educate on behalf of diverse and certified firms on the local and state level to ensure that any legislative and purgatory initiatives affecting the construction-related companies can be addressed in a factual, legal, and beneficial manner.
What does that mean in practice? I guess
Oh, in
what,
practice.
Like, so
Oh,
what do you
okay,
guys
thank
actually like?
Yeah, so we actually take on a variety of different topics and a lot of different initiatives. So one thing that we were really focused on this year, or in the last year too, was a wage theft ordinance that got passed by the city and county of Denver.
Okay.
We've looked at Adams County's outdoor storage code. That was another thing. So we really look at legislative measures and even local issues that are really prevalent. What Rosy said, we're a voice for small businesses. It's really challenging when you're a small business to really be heard, to really have a voice, and to really talk about your own issues and concerns that impact you from a small business perspective. So that is truly what we try to do, is be that voice for all of our small business members, and to really advocate for those things that are most, arduous to our companies.
And the wage theft is interesting. We work across North America, and even though Assigner's headquartered in Denver, And we work with companies in California where the compliance, and there's a lot of like legality there, right? In terms of what time tracking, how you keep track, how you pay your people. Tell us a little bit more, if you can, about the one specific to the city and county of Denver, the wage theft. Can we go a little deeper there?
Yeah, absolutely. As a small business owner, you're very concerned about, wages and really, as Rosy said, I stay up every night thinking about the 103 people that are part of my organization and feeding them. So, we take these matters very seriously. So for wage theft, that was something where we understood the principle behind it. However, they don't understand the underlying issues that it can create from a small business perspective. We don't have a large back of house administrative support or documentation like you were just mentioning, Chris. So it's really challenging from a small business perspective to kind of wrap your head around enforcing these measures and taking on this added burden. In this legislative session this year, we've seen a lot of procedures and processes and regulations. They have great beneficial meaning, but the overall principles are wonderful, but it's the underlying issues like the paperwork, the documentation, the reporting requirements that puts a really unfair burden on small businesses. Another thing that we were really, and I love stats, so I'm going to throw out some stats.
Let's do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's, about 45,000 construction jobs that need to be put into play by 2047.
Because of the demand?
Yeah. And there's a 25% growth potential for the construction industry in the near future. So one thing that we're really advocating on is workforce. There's been a lot of different measures behind it, but one that we were really interested in was the Senate Bill 23065, which was a career development success program. And this program was really centered around, high school kids, 9 through 12, in which they can get, the schools, charter schools and public schools can get funding and incentives for allowing students to get certificates in like the construction industry and pre-apprenticeship programs. So creating that, workforce, because we are seeing a huge decline. We're seeing a lot of the baby boomers coming off. And now it's getting to the point where we really have to focus on the young students out there and really get them intrigued and interested in the construction industry. So that was one thing that we were really really supporting and trying to advocate for. So that was one just recently that we've been
great. Yeah, we had one of our early podcast guests, slightly different angle, but talked about that. He's a vet, got into the construction industry, and then talked a lot about on that podcast about how other vets and other people too, like how do you get into that industry? Like what education and training, and even the view of those sorts of jobs, right? And what he said was, you can still make good money and take care of your family and do all these things, and it's not necessarily I don't know if it's a negative thing, but there's a lot of positive things that go into that. And so it was just fascinating that kind of correlated back to what you were saying in terms of that path towards that career. And it sounds like that's what you guys, kind of obviously this is in conjunction, but like helping support the industry.
Absolutely.
Let's raise it up and kind of change the paradigm a little bit, right?
Yeah, and in public education at the high school level or even middle school level, what you saw in the last 10 years is all of those trade programs, carpentry, electricity, plumbing, and things like that, they disappear, Chris. And right now we are being aware of the need for those programs. When you have kids that are college age, right? You think about, their future. If they have a trade, they can be having a job where they can make enough wages to pay for their school if they want to go to college. But right now, that's not necessarily available to them. They have to go into a $200,000 student loan.
Saddled with debt, right?
And then when they graduate, they have to pay for that loan. And so what kind of sustainability we're creating there for our kids? These type of apprenticeship programs, believe me, they pose benefits and then they pose also challenges, right? In many ways. So that's why we're here to see those apprenticeship programs are available for high school graduating students, but also we have to make sure that the burden is not put on the business to create that apprenticeship program. Why? Because as a small or medium-sized business, we don't have the capability to create an apprenticeship program and then put them to work. So we have to kind of work with our authorities and our government entities to understand the fact that when we say we're proposing this bill, well, you're creating 3 to 4 weekly hours of work for the small business owner. You have to see the impact of that. You really have to think about all the components of a bill or a proposal. Sometimes it's for the betterment of our community, absolutely. But you also have to think about who's going to be carrying the burden of all that paperwork, all those hours in the office, being that we don't have an HR, 4 or 5 people team that are going to help us with that. So creating transparency for them, because a lot of them don't have business ownership experience. A lot of the people that put through these bills and proposals, they never run a business. They have never think about, am I going to make payroll this week?
And if you don't have that
like
experience, it's things you don't think about.
It's
right?
hard.
Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah, it's hard to relate to them. So that's why we're here. And we don't come across as, gosh, you can't do that. No, we come across from the standpoint of, let's talk about it. Let's create a common ground, because some of these things do make sense for our communities. They better our society, but we have to think about how to do it.
Let's talk about, I see some stats here for Colorado specifically and the construction industry. So let's talk a little bit about that.
The Colorado construction industry is a $25 billion industry, and it brings about 187,000 jobs to Colorado. And just like what Rosy was saying is, we try to bring the perspective of small businesses and to give opportunities. So one thing that's really been at the forefront of our mind is the infrastructure bill. Everybody knows about this behemoth $1.3 trillion bill, and the money is starting to flow now down to states and local municipalities. So we want to be on the forefront of it, because a lot of, almost 57% of the 21,000 construction firms are small business. So we need to create opportunities for those firms, especially when we're looking at such a wonderful infrastructure act. So recently there was a state disparity study that was conducted, and it showed that minority and women-owned businesses received about 8% of the state contract dollars, and below the 28% expected from the availability of their analysis. This disparity needs to be addressed, and we need to address it now, especially when you have so many small businesses that are carrying the weight of the construction industry. 57%, that's more than half of the construction industry is based on small business. So, we are an advocate for that, and we're really pushing on that. One thing that we were very active, we testified on behalf of and had a wonderful relationship with Senator Coleman and Senator Kolkler and Representative Ricks, was the State Procurement Disparities Remediation Act. That's Senate Bill 22-163. This was to establish a program, a state program, a procurement equity program with the Department of the Personnel, in the purpose of reducing the disparities identified in this state disparity study that I just mentioned, and to provide opportunities for historically underutilized businesses and the utilization of such businesses in state procurement. So one thing that came out of it is that they wanted to hold stakeholder engagement. I think we're getting to that point. So we're just really looking forward to the future and working with these representatives and these senators to really push forward this initiative and make meaningful impact for the small business community, because that is what we represent at the HCC. That is our primary mission, is to really provide opportunities and a voice for those small and disadvantaged businesses out there.
I really wanted to thank both of you for being here. But before we go, I know, let's talk HCC. How do people get to know you guys? How do we reach out? How do
Absolutely.
we learn?
They can just basically go to the website. There's a membership tab or become a member tab, and it's super easy to explore. We have a brochure right there that you can just go through the pages and figure out what's the best level of membership that pertain to your business and how involved you want to be. One thing I can tell you is that there's a lot of different ways that you can interact with large primes or government entities through the events and networking opportunities that we put out there. So the website is www.hcc-diversityleader.org. And you can certainly go through that. And one other thing that I want to mention, Chris, is we were started by a handful of wonderful Latino-owned businesses. But when you look at the membership for the HCC, that's why we're known as the diversity leader, because we have businesses that come from every industry, from every background in the demographic that you can imagine. We're super welcoming to anybody that is either starting or that has been in business for 5 years or that has been in business for 30 years. We have a little bit of everything for everybody. Most of the time, we do have companies that are in construction, engineering, design, architects, things like that. But then we also have professional services companies that work with those industries, like a printing company that does all of the traffic control signage. We have a handful of consultants that also work in the procurement side of things. So we have a variety of people that are all involved in the industry. Why construction? Well, we have a future. We're not going to start building. We continue to grow as a society. So it's either housing or it's either commercial building or it's healthcare or, aviation. We work in the community, and the community is growing as a whole. And there's a lot of construction companies that can see great opportunity in working in this industry and being very unique to that part of their business. So.
No, that's fantastic. And both of you have been fantastic today. Thank you for being guests. I know our audience is really going to enjoy this episode. So thanks.
Thank you again for inviting us.
Yeah.
We really appreciate that. You're a fantastic partner, and we hope for many years to come to continue with the relationship.
We'd love to.
Thank you.